mean, it's a little weird for me because you're a libertarian. And in fact, you could even wind up on a libertarian ticket at some point, if not this cycle. No, but I'm just saying it could happen, right? So you're literally a libertarian. But for some reason, we have the same instincts on almost everything, I would say. There are a lot of people in conservative media who I always have felt like I had a lot in common with, and now I don't. And it's not because I've gotten liberal. I've gotten way less liberal. Right. I see them as way more liberal. So what had happened to...
So Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith sat down and had a conversation. And we know how that goes when Tucker Carlson sits down and talks to somebody. People react, people get all worked up because Tucker is on a different mission, y'all. Like, you could tell Tucker's not answering to anybody, right? So, like, if you want to think about it a certain way, when Tucker left Fox, you know what? Maybe I'll get to the point that I'm going to make a little further on in the interview. But anyway, he's starting to make the point of he's finding himself more in tune, if you will, with somebody like a Dave Smith, who's a libertarian, right? And I really think that this coming into the middle thing is really happening across the board. So we'll get into that. Let's see a little bit more about what Tucker says. He does respond a little bit about his sit down with Joe Rogan and how people like Ben Shapiro had absolutely lost their mind over this man simply saying dropping atomic bombs on civilian people is evil. That's it. It's just that simple.
Conservative media, not all of them. I have a million friends in it, but like a lot of the big names seem very liberal to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of the same thing that happened to libertarians. I think they're in Washington, D.C., and that's not where you're supposed to be.
No, that's right.
And so the best libertarian organization in the world is the Mises Institute, and it's based in Auburn, and
Alabama.
Yeah, and they specifically put it there because they want no part of Washington, D.C. And then you see all of the Cato and guys like that who are based out of DC, they get very corrupted, and you can look at it. It's the same thing. We were just talking about Donahue calling out Chris Matthews back in the day. Yeah. They're having cocktail parties with the Fed chairman. Wait, you're libertarian.
So that is an important point that Dave Smith makes. I just want to look at the beginning of this conversation. We're kind of seeing this together, right? Because I actually didn't watch this part of this video. Of the sit down, I kind of skimmed through it a little bit, and I kind of was looking for important parts, but I never start off right in the beginning. They went right in. They went right into what is a very eye-opening conversation. Now, before we get into the rest, guys, please, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. On this channel, I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers, and I really like making these videos. I'm not saying that you owe me anything at all, but I just know that right now people are trying to figure out information or even talk about things. Not even figure out information, talk about things with balanced dialogue, right? Not this whole virtue signaling, you must think this. If you take this label, then you must sign on to everything that comes with that label at all times, no questions asked. I think that right now we are in a time where the right is looking like the left with this. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you think that too. So here on this channel, it's not even we're libertarian on this channel. No, we're just having a balanced dialogue.
They're actually doing that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually doing that. And I think a lot of that's the same problem with the kind of conservatism Inc. or whatever. Yes. They've been corrupted, and power is seductive. And I'm sure you know that from being in DC for so many years that I'm not saying you're kind of an anomaly. You think about all the people in Washington, DC, and how much all of them wanted to suck up to power almost, right? 90-something%.
At least that's why they're there.
Right. And so it's a difficult thing to...
I didn't get that for some reason for so long. I was living in the middle of it. I don't know. I'm not a super genius, so I didn't realize how corrupt it was. Everyone always said it was corrupt. It felt like a really nice place to me.
Probably because it wasn't overtly corrupt. I just feel like corruption now is it's showing itself without any kind of censorship to its corruption. Let's put it that way. I don't believe in censorship, right? But we're talking about corruption. Back in the day, you didn't know what was really going on in Congress or things like that. Even though there were people who were trying to tell us exactly what was going on in Congress, we were living in a time where I think things were more routine and chill, at least if you will. Now, I am 40 years old, so I'm talking about like 1990, 2000, obviously in 1990, I wasn't paying attention to the news, but our parents were like, they were going to work. You could have the American dream and be a working class citizen. You didn't have to feel like you needed to like own a diamond mine just simply to just have a house for your family, right? I'm not complaining. I want to be very clear, but we must talk about the obvious differences from when our parents were raising us in America to now. And let's keep it real, with all these wars and everything that's happening, funding other countries and everything else, our parents weren't going through that the way we are today. So the American citizen, I mean, this is America last. So coming back to the point, he didn't see the corruption back then because I think that we weren't in such a severe position. But if you really look, I don't want to get all the way into to geopolitics, which I really can't. That's why I really want to be able to go live with you guys and everything. But if you really look at it, like if you look at what's going on across the world with Ukraine, Israel, the Indo-Pacific, everything, our American forces are everywhere. Well, how much money does it cost to maintain a base in Syria? You know what I'm saying? So it's the chickens are starting to come home to roost. That's what it is. So the corruption is deadly in your face. Con Inc., that is a thing.
Raised all my kids there. But when you realize how corrupt it is, I mean, it's horrifying.
Yeah. But that's also, I think there's something like the nature of conservatism or the conservative movement in America has always just been to lose. Like it's like built into them. Like every generation just loses and then moves on to the next thing to lose. I like the old right, the Robert Taft. Right. They were largely in opposition to the New Deal. They were fighting back against the FDR's New Deal. We're in opposition to that. And then, you cut forward 20 years and it's FDR Democrats are the new Republicans, right? Ronald Reagan is like, it's nobody would dare question the New Deal. And then of course there was a movement pushing back against the Great Society and and now of course entitlements are like no one would ever dare question Medicare. And look, just recently I saw Donald Trump, who's not a traditional conservative, but he did the most traditional conservative thing when and I'm like, okay, right. So that's where we're at now, right?
Instead of getting rid of Obamacare, which I feel Dave Smith, and I'm going to tell you why. Because conservatives don't know how to win. Okay. So because they don't know how to win, they go along to get along. They put up a little fight for their base so their base can feel like they're fighting. And then they go along and tolerate. What are we conserving anymore? What is a conservative conserving? You got big government. Oh, the Constitution. Really? There's a lot of bureaucratic agencies that definitely go around the Constitution. I mean, they're writing laws against your First Amendment right to free speech and how you practice your religion. We talked about that. That's in the last episode that I just put up, not too long ago with Vivek Ramaswamy and PBD podcast, right? So like they go into it and then I go into it, right? So, what's being conserved then? Who's fighting for American traditions? Who is? And so you get to a point where, you ask yourself that question, and then what ends up happening is that finally people get tired. And then when the pendulum swings back the other way, because eventually it does, it's going to swing back into a very extreme way. It is. And then you have paleo conservatives, which is a shame that was even a name. Like conservatives should just be conservative. Like Pat Buchanan, who would keep it real about our quote allies in other nations and everything. And they ran him out. They called him, that's when identity, that might have been, it had to be when identity politics really, really started. They called him a racist and everything. And then they slandered him. That man was America first. And you need that.
It's like, no. You wanted to overthrow Assad over a decade ago. Don't give me this bullshit that this is some new plan now. So I do know that they will lie through their teeth to the American people. Like this, I know for certain that they will lie.
He's talking about like neocons and like how we always go into a war based on some sort of special story. But the fact is they already have a list of the countries that we need to go to war in. I love this conversation. I do. I love that Dave Smith talks about this a lot. This is a comedian, right? But Con Inc. won't talk about it. Not in this fashion. Not in this fashion. Ben Shapiro will certainly not talk about this in this fashion.
Through their teeth to the American people to get enough public support for mass slaughter campaigns, because they want those campaigns for completely different reasons. And
again, guys, if you could please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, it really does help. I didn't even plan to go this long with this episode, but I really think that these conversations are worth having, or even this dialogue, or even this commentary, right? But it's really worth having. And you know what? I'm saying this. What do you think? Do you think that there's something happening in media? Like, we know the left-wing media, like we already know CNN, Fox News, everything. I do call that left-wing. But we already know mainstream media, people already like, it's like, that's old news. Like, oh, MSNBC is so, extra progressive and all. But I feel like something's happening in the conservative pundit landscape. Do you feel the same way? Or maybe I'm looking into this too deeply.
Again, like I said before, this isn't speculation. They wrote this in their own words. One of the reasons they wanted to remake the Middle East in this way is because they thought it was in Israel's interest. And that, to me, is like just totally unacceptable as an American, that first off, you're lying to the people of this country, and you're doing something with a foreign country's interest in mind. That's just like so appalling that I think people should be like publicly hung for it. But it's after a trial, after a fair trial, they should be.
I mean, it's not America first. I would say that
it's kind of,
that's a dig. And y'all already know. Go ahead, mail it to Ben Shapiro. That is for him. It's not America first. I'll tell you that. Shout out to Dave Smith. Okay. Shout all the way out to Dave Smith, because the point that he just made, and I'm not doing this thing like all Jews think the same. No. But I know as a Black person how hard it is to speak against Black crime and call it Black crime. I know what I get called and how I get treated. It is what it is. I don't care. I'm not about to cry or anything. So for him to make that statement in full honesty, I love that, man. I'm not asking for much. Like, just don't gaslight me when we have it actually written down somewhere and we know that this is the case, So shout out to Dave Smith for that.
It's kind of hard to
square that circle.
Yes.
But what's interesting is that so many people who talk about America first or whatever, they're fully on board with this. They attack anyone who's not. I had a thoroughly bizarre experience the other day, and maybe you can shed light on what it means, because I don't fully understand it. But I was doing. Okay,
first of all, I'm sorry. When Tucker talks, it's like, maybe you can shed light on what it means, because I don't understand. But they're like, boy, stop. You know what? Like, this is not the first time he's done this.
Rogan's podcast at your urging. So thank you for that. I had a great time.
I love the podcast.
Yeah, it was super, super fun. But it's very long. It was like 3 hours long. So, and I can't stop talking. So I'm another thing. And I'm going on about whatever, And at one point, I just blurted out for like 15 seconds something I've thought about recently, which is the use of the nuclear bombs, the only time they have been used, in August of 1945 against Hiroshima and then Nagasaki. Complex topic. A lot of it's not publicly well known. Okay. But just the bottom line fact that we dropped, particularly the bomb on Nagasaki, which was the Christian capital of Japan, by the way, that bomb was dropped on a church and killed, 3/4 of the Christians in the city, which bothers me as a Christian. But leaving even that aside.
And I'm glad he made that point, because we never make points like that. Just so, real quick, not to get again all geopolitical, right? There'll be this like debate. I've been involved in so many debates in the last few months, and there'll be this talking point in the debates like, well, Christians are they're persecuted in the Middle East, and the Christian population has declined in the Middle East. Yeah, because we've been bombing the Middle East. Like, that's a fact. That's known. Like, ancient Christian civilization is being destroyed from our bombs. Now, I don't care if it was a bunch of atheists in the Middle East, right? We shouldn't drop bombs on innocent people or civilians. That's all he said.
It killed civilians. It wasn't dropped on a military base. It was killed civilians. And like, I get why people did it, or maybe I don't get it, but I think 80 years later, we can say it's not something to brag about, incinerating civilians. I don't care what the context is. That's evil. That's basically all I said. Holy shit. Did I get attacked from the right? And I thought, and I don't even follow the attacks on me ever, but I kept getting texts from people. Oh, I can't believe you said that. Or people are mad at you for saying that. And I thought, of all the dumb, cruel, untrue things I have said over 30 years of just talking in public, a lot of which I regret, and I hope I've apologized for every bad thing I've said, but I've said a lot of really things are impossible to defend. That's what they attacked me on?
Absolutely. And if we really went into why they attacked him on it, you know, we just need to really start streaming on his channel so we can have the discussions that need to be had. Okay. Because I'm not, you know what it is about me too. I half truths, I can't stand them. I can't stand half truths or total omission of truths. I'd rather just tell me you don't know, you know, but a half truth, I don't like it. The globalist, like, talk to me, yo, who's behind, give me the consultant groups, tell me the names, you know. That's all I'm saying. This is how I operate, man. I don't know how else. I'm wired this way, probably because of my profession, where this is what we do. We go look for the source of the problem and tackle that. After we've gotten things to a baseline, we find the source and we tackle the source. So this thing, when we do this broad talking, it is baffling to me. Like, I can't stand it. I seriously cannot stand it.
There is something deeply malign about the United States, something deeply wrong with the United States. This was made apparent over the weekend. Tucker Carlson was on Joe Rogan's show. Obviously, I'm very friendly with Joe. I think Joe does a great job during his interviews. And there was a clip from this interview that went particularly viral. This is a clip in which Tucker Carlson calls the United States evil for having dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, ending World War II, and then suggests that anyone who would justify that is also evil, which is a very traditionally left-wing perspective. It is not traditionally a particularly right-wing perspective, because most people on the conservative side of the aisle tend to believe that America is a force for good in the world. And as we'll discuss, it turns out that dropping the atomic bomb on Japan was necessary for ending World War II, and likely.
And we're going to stop there. I'm not going to sit there and promote some sort of thing like that, because I'm going to tell you, you can look. Let's speak in full honesty. Like, in full honesty, I don't know how that ended World War II. I simply don't know. It was a show of force, right? But maybe I could drop some, you know, literature that I should look into, or something. But I'm sorry. I heard the war was like on its way out. I heard that people were getting ready to surrender. I mean, you know, people will say, well, we did it because what they did to us in Pearl Harbor, you know, but I don't know how to say. So then say it was a show of force, but to straight say like that's the reason why the war ended. But then I look at World War II and I'm like, but how did we even get that much involved with Japan? And I know what y'all going to say. Y'all are going to be like, you know, like, Dad, this girl doesn't know anything. It's not that, yo. Like, it just never connected for me. Just like, I'm sorry, just like the Iraq war never connected for me. For 20 years, trillions of dollars later, we only replaced the Taliban with the Taliban. But wait a minute, we went into Iraq, so why am I talking about the Taliban and Afghanistan? This is what happens all the time. And so for somebody like Ben Shapiro to sit there and not understand the point that Tucker Carlson is making, that it's not about, you know what, you, the audience, deserve better, because his notion is that's a left-wing perspective. So we don't think like that. That's placing you in a box. And let me tell you, it took a lot of work for me to take myself out of the racial box of being a Black girl. And that's not Black enough for me to watch, do, or say, right? I'm not going to place myself into any other box after that, except for the Christian box, because, like, you know, I don't believe in like hurting kids and like doing something. But anyway, I'm not putting myself in any other box. No, I want the box. If I'm putting myself in another box, it's going to be an America First box where we talk about America in full reality. No, I do not think the citizens of America are horrible, horrible people. Absolutely not. And guess what? The left, the classic liberal, doesn't think that either. Listen to Jimmy Dore. He doesn't talk like that. I think that our American establishment has done too much. The American citizen didn't know. They're starting to become aware of it now. And we've been America last for far too long, and everything is coming to a head.